Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Keynsham. Thank you to Keynsham for making us so welcome. I have to tell you that the film is running, so we are all being captured for posterity. I believe double angle as well. There's no escape. So first of all, may we start with apologies for absence. Emma?
Davis, Jacobs, Johnson and Lake.
Do you have any others? Is Councillor Windows exhausted from leaflet delivery?
He should be, yes. Would be here, it should be here, Chairman.
Okay. So no other apologies received. Okay, thank you, Richard. So emergency evacuation procedures, I'll pass it to professionals on my right to guide us.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We're not expecting any fire alarm tests this afternoon during the meeting, so if it does operate, it's likely to be on the site itself. 2 fire exits in the room, or both corners of the room. Both lead to staircases. If you go down the staircase, the one on the left-hand side will lead you down into the library area, and just make your way out the nearest exit. There will be signs on the doors.
Excuse me, before you begin, could someone tell me the password for the website? Password for what?
I don't think it needs a password, actually.
I don't need a password. That's the problem with Wi-Fi. This one, do you have any declarations of interest? You might have one.
Yeah, I've rated their interest in item. Should be this, Jeff, sorry.
17?
17.
17. Right, Chair's business. I'd like to wish all members of the authority, staff and officers a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you all. I hope you have a good Christmas season. News-wise, I'm sure most of you have met Sally Bowen, an independent person. Well, Sally has tendered her resignation in that role to us because her grandson has been selected to become a firefighter. So one in, one out.
Yeah.
And we are going to go out for everybody's happy, we'll go out for replacement. I suggest we go for 2 replacements. So we'll begin that process in the new year. You will have now, I hope, a copy of the Constitution, which you'll all be expected to read over the new year. Next meeting will be full question and answer on it. And probably slightly as important, you should all have one of these new lanyards with our values on. So.
And also golden thread.
Is it real gold?
No.
And the last meeting we discussed the point about member fire station champions. I think we circulated around to members. There are still quite a lot of vacancies on the list. And it would be useful to be able to do a greater programme of station visits next year. If each member could look to take on a station, there are 21. So no one person can double up, I guess, in due course, but people take on the station up to the use to improve our engagement with the staff team. And finally, I've got the Asian Fire Service Association Award, Simon Shilton. Have you heard?
Embarrassment here.
All right. Have you got one?
Yes. The recent Asian Fire Service Association conference was nominated for leadership in equality and diversity from around 5 of the nominees for that particular topic. I'm pleased to announce that I was successful in achieving that, and that's, I think, on behalf of the whole organisation and work that the organisation has undertaken, in particular over the last 18 months or so, and it's credit to the organisation that we've been recognised in that way.
Okay, so did members want a paper copy of the fire stations list? It's a bit of a hint to drawing up. Anyone will pass the Oh, yeah, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. We are looking for a member champion for each fire station, and of course it makes perfect sense for it to be in your area, your locality, your ward, or even your local authority. But we'll also be looking at certain specialisms and to assist us by having a member champion in specific areas of business, like community safety and like inclusion and diversity. So there will be areas of business that we would be hopeful for members to volunteer to be that member champion for those specific areas of business. So we'll circulate something. You've got the list of stations there, but we'll circulate something in terms of the areas of business that we're particularly interested in having a member champion if you do have some spare time and a wish and a want within that area. Thank you.
Okay, now we go on to minutes of the authority meeting on the 25th of September. Are you happy for me to sign that as a true record thereof?
Right.
Okay. Second, please, Richard Eddy and Robert Payne seconded. Thank you. Then we come on to the extraordinary meeting on the 31st of October. Are you happy, Richard?
Whilst chairman, I usually am happy to have 100 votes. I can't be in two places at one time.
Okay.
I wasn't present, but I gave my apologies.
Right. So with that amendment, are we happy to endorse those? Are you happy to endorse that, Bruce?
I wasn't there, so
Oh.
I think it should be
Robert
something.
Payne as proposed. Have a seconder, please. Richard Eddy, thank you. I'll sign those in the pen work. Okay, public access we have none, is that correct? Okay, so minutes of the URSC meeting on the 11th of October. Tony Davis was due to move these, but he wasn't, he's ill. Was anybody else on that committee?
I've been chairman.
Okay, have a seconder? Seconded by Trevor. Happy to sign those then? Thank you. We go on to item number 8, which is the GAFSIP presentation based on the October visit. And I think Nick and Paul Kirk are going to do this one.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Simon's going to set the video up because we've got some videos to show you. Paul will assist by doing a bit of a presentation, but if I could introduce this item, thank you. Members, you'll be aware that in June we brought a paper to the authority in relation to the GAFSIP charity, and in June at the authority meeting you agreed to continue to support the Gambian Avon Fire Servicing Partnership, GAFSIP charity, and you also agreed at that time in terms of the disposal of 3 fire appliances that would be donated to the GAFSIP charity and then therefore shipped to Gambia. Unfortunately, Carol Johnson can't be here. Councillor Carol Johnson can't be here today. She's passed her apologies because she was going to do this presentation along with Paul. And a team of people went out to Gambia in October, which Paul will cover in a moment with a video, a couple of videos, and also a bit of a verbal update. But Councillor Carol Johnson went out to Gambia, came with us. Myself, I went out with the team. We had a team of 5 that also attended, and it was a fantastic trip. We got to present the keys of the appliances which the authority kindly donated to the President of Gambia at the Presidential Palace, which was a great event and was very humbling actually in terms of how grateful the Gambian people are for that donation. There is a history here in relation to the charity which goes back many years. and now sees the Gambian Fire Service, you'll see on the video, has been supported very much over the years by Avon Fire Authority, by the donation of kit, equipment and vehicles. And this particular trip was superb because we were there and we opened a new fire station whilst we were there. We opened a new fire station with the trucks and the kit equipment that were donated, and pretty much the whole town turned up to say thank you to us. So a fantastic trip. I won't steal Paul's thunder too much, but I will assist and chip in when needed, and towards the end perhaps wrap up. So I'll hand over to Paul now that the video's ready.
Thanks very much. Yeah, just to add to what Mick said, this was the first time that I had the opportunity to go with a member of the Fire Authority, and I think, unfortunately Carol can't be with us today, but I think she would echo Mick's sort of expressions really about the benefits to the individuals that went and also to the country itself. And I'd just like to sort of extend that welcome to any one of you. If you would like to come in the future, you're more than welcome to come and see what the work that we're doing out there involves. And I think it just is very easy to kind of talk about things back here, but when you actually see it in reality, then you can actually get a real picture from the work that we're doing. So yeah, we have got a couple of videos for you today. We've got, some of you may have seen this, so I apologise for those of you who've seen this already. There's still a spell mistake in there somewhere, if you can spot it. So this is just about the background to the actual charity itself. So just basically, a member of the fire service from Avon went to the Gambia in 1991. Unfortunately, or fortunately you could say, he witnessed a RTC, so a road traffic collision, and it killed 6 members of one family. Okay, so he thought that he could come back and with some basic training, some basic equipment, change the whole of the Gambian Fire and Rescue Service. So at the time there were 2 fire stations and there were 87 members of staff. And I think out of that 87, only about 40 were actually operational firefighters. So it was a large country with very few resources. So anyway, he came back and he canvassed for redundant equipment and goods from various agencies, Airbus, I think, South Wales Fire Service, lots of different fire services gave their redundant equipment, and that was shipped out to the Gambia. And so from where we were in 1991, in 2004 it was set up as a registered charity, and now we have 12 fire stations, with the 12th just being opened when we were out there, which was fantastic, and 2 fire engines or fire appliances from Avon went to that station. And there was a great ceremony at this place called Bajikunda. So Bajikunda is in the east of the country, and there's about 6,000 people who live there. We had a phone call a couple of years ago saying that they've had a couple of serious fires, and although no one was killed, there were some serious burns, but they also lost all of their livestock, so through bushfires. So this made a massive impact to the local community, and it really did decimate their wealth, because a lot of the wealth is in farming, and they lost it all in one foul swoop. So the government put some measures in place to allocate some land. So the actual villagers allocated some land on the outside of the village itself, and then the government supplied the money to fund the new fire station, which was great. And then the local villagers kind of all got involved and helped to build it as well. Okay, so here we are now in a situation where we could supply 2 fire appliances, and then we sent 5 members of Avon Fire and Rescue Service out there to train them, and so they've got fully equipped fire appliance, 2 fully equipped fire appliances, and they've got the knowledge and skills to be able to use it effectively, which is obviously the most important thing. because there's no point sending a fire engine out there and not having the training to back it up. So that was fantastic. I'll just mention as well about finances. So we don't send any money to Africa because that wouldn't really fulfill our objectives under the Charity Commission. So what we do is we simply send redundant equipment from various donators around the country. And like I mentioned before, we had South Wales who actually phoned us and said, do you want some gas-tight suits? So I contacted Gambia and said, do you really need some gas-tight suits? And they said, oh yeah, fantastic, we'll have some gas-tight suits. I said, well, what for? You know? And they said, well, for snakes. You know? So they're quite ingenious in putting the resources that we have in this country to different purposes over there. So yeah, snakes is one thing, and then they also use it for bees. You know, African bees are quite aggressive, so they put on an old-fashioned gas-tight suit that was supplied from South Wales Fire Service, and they could go and deal with a bee swarm. So it's very interesting and very different line of work. So anyway, we went out there just recently, and we trained them in ladders, pumping, and some of the station routines. And I think some of the guys realised that they had their work cut out when we said, well, what do you think is a high rise? You know, we were talking about it, or you'll be talking about it later on today. And they said, well, yeah, anything over a ground floor. You know, so that's where we are, because generally in this village there's nothing above ground floor. So the guys realised they had their work cut out as well when we had this 135 ladder, 13.5 metres goes up to, and they tried to put it about the wrong way round. Okay, but by the end of the 2 weeks, they managed to deal with the 135 ladder quite effectively, and we managed to show Mick and Carol, you know, the skills that they'd picked up over that 2 week period. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll show this first video for those of you who haven't seen it before, and then there's a little catch-up video of the trip that we've just done. Okay, if you have got any questions, just feel free to ask. If you think about anything in the future, you're more than welcome to email Emma, if that's okay, and she'll direct any questions towards us. Okay, so have you got any questions just before we play the video? No? So that was the first video, just with the background of the charity. I did also just forget to mention that the trainers who go out there, they're all self-funded. Okay, so they pay their own way. So none of that comes out of any of the charity or any other person's pocket. It's just the individual who goes. So I think that's really important. And I think all the administration costs, because I know some charities have, they pay for the administration and they pay for secretaries and what have you, but all of that comes from the individual's personal donation of time. Okay, so none of the funding for that comes from anywhere else apart from the individual. Okay, so I think
that's a really important point. Everyone that goes pays for themselves. And what's more important is that this is a direct donation. So we're not giving this to a third party and think it might go missing. We're actually donating this directly to the Gambian Fire Service. So it gets shipped from this country into Gambia. We meet the vehicles there and then we hand them over. So for me, that's fantastic. There's no middle person here. This is a direct donation.
we did receive a letter of appreciation as well, that we will try and get to you as members of the Fire Authority, that was directly to you. So for your thanks for supporting the charity as well. So that's something that we'll try and make sure that we can get into the next meeting for you. Okay. I'll just run this second video now. Yeah, so I hope that gives you a bit of a picture about what we've been doing as a charity. Looking forward, we had a meeting on Monday actually, talking about where we could go. It's all about self-sustainability, isn't it? So eventually what we really want is for Gambia to be able to support itself and be self-sustaining, really, is the ultimate goal. So we're going to be looking at training trainers over there so that they can give training to their staff themselves and kind of cut us out eventually. Is the ultimate idea, really. I don't know if you noticed on there that we want to send some sewing machines out there. So we sent some PPE, some personal protective equipment, fire kit, and some old uniforms that are a bit worse their wear for the UK, perfectly acceptable in Africa. And so we want to send some sewing machines out so each of the stations can actually repair their own fire kit and their own uniform, which just means that the lifespan of that equipment lasts even longer. So I think the way that everything seems to be going in terms of environmental policies and what have you, it just seems to make sense that we carry on with this. And we've had a couple of phone calls from other fire and rescue services now, asking what we do with our old equipment and our old uniforms and PPE, because their contracts are coming to an end and they need to try and get rid of them responsibly. and so they're actually asking us if we would take them. So there may be opportunities there to actually work with some other services and see what they can offer as well. Okay. Though I hope you have. I think you've all seen the evaluation report. We will try and issue that letter to you of thanks as soon as we possibly can as well. Okay. Unless you've got any questions.
Richard?
As I've said before, this seems a splendid initiative, so well done, thank you. I've got just 2 questions. Firstly, about the dialogue we have with them about the Gambia's need. Obviously, this is donations or surplus equipment from us. Do we actually have the discussion with them? What are you seeking to want, or what do you hope medium term to get?
Yeah, so I mean, this is another thing that was discussed on Monday. So, I mean, obviously Africa will try, this is Gambia, this is Africa, and they will try and accept everything, but we need to work out, just because you say that you want it, doesn't necessarily mean that you need it. So that was the discussion. So everything that we send out, because there's a cost involved to shipping to the charity, we don't want to send out anything that is almost surplus to their wants, not needs. So we want to fulfill their needs, not their wants, if that makes sense.
My second question, I think you partially answered this with your reply to my previous question, but obviously the donations are free effectively, but presumably you were saying we pay carriers' costs, and presumably there's some port management fees. Is there any possibility of getting them to forego these?
We've tried long and hard, trust me. Yeah, so they have reduced the shipping costs for us because we're a charity. And the fire appliances that we just sent out there, they gave us a discount that was equivalent to something like 10 years ago. So I think that was quite good, and that was all they would possibly offer. So yeah, we have tried long and hard to reduce it to nothing, but they obviously need to make money as well.
I think it's worth noting, Councillor, that it's the charity that pays for shipping, not the Fire Authority. So the Fire Authority's gift here is the donation of the vehicles which you have disposed of through the right channels. The charity does fundraising to pay for the shipping. So, and there's a number of things that happen through the year to raise that funding. But, it was absolutely right. The answer is yes, we're always having conversations about how we can do it in the cheapest way possible.
Yeah.
Any further question? Thank you, Paul, and thank you
Okay.
for what you
Thanks very much.
trustees do. Thank you all. Item number 9 is the Constitution.
Chair, so you all, I believe, have the revised constitution that we agreed at the last meeting, and just to make you aware, on page 13 we did add one additional item to the terms of reference for the People and Culture Committee. So this was to ensure that members had oversight of all ill health retirement applications. So we've added that to the terms of reference for the committee. Other than that, it's as you agreed.
Thank you. Forward call.
Item 10, so again, meeting dates and key decisions you have before you. It's only for it's the rest of this municipal year, but for the new municipal year, we will add an item in September for the Constitution again, so you'll have had a year in operation of that Constitution, and then you can review what's going well and what needs to be amended. I think Councillor Massey has raised whether we could have the meetings more centrally, and in discussion earlier on today, what we'd like to suggest is that we hold all the fire authority meetings at Portishead, but all the committees we hold in the local fire stations, if that's acceptable.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, Chair. I think places like Hickscape, you've got a nice meeting room over there, sort of thing, and that would be one area that I'd like to see us use more for committees.
as well, Chair. I think it would make a lot of sense for us to get out and about the fire stations 2021 that we've got for us all to see, not just in our own areas, but across the county.
Okay. So we have our committee meetings at stations, and we have our main authority meetings in the room at HQ. I believe, well, there are two things. I believe Brenda wants to move an amendment, which I think you've circulated, Brenda.
Yes.
And before we do that, as far as I'm aware, the second part of the recommendation, items 3.9 in the paper, are now redundant because Baines have moved their meeting, so this request to change our meeting is no longer necessary. So your leader told me the other day. So
We believe it.
So we can delete from the recommendations the second paragraph on paragraph 3.9. It's no longer factually accurate. And Brenda?
I just want to put context on the reason why I brought this forward. I think a number of us today, for instance, have had huge problems trying to find anywhere to park around here. And some of the meetings, the full fire authority meetings we've had, where they finish at night, and it's sort of from September to March when it's really getting dark a lot earlier. When you leave a meeting, as we did when we went to the field one, you go out and it's pitch black out there and you're a woman on your own. And personally, I didn't think that was very safe for us. Going out in an area where I'm familiar with at night and nobody else is around. So that was part of the reason I brought this forward. And I hope I get some support from you. Obviously, all the venues must be fully accessible to anybody, and preferably by some reasonable parking options as well. I know today is probably an exception, but it has been incredibly difficult, and a number of us were actually late to the start of the early meeting just because of this. In the summer, it's not quite such a problem, but I do think we do need to consider the needs of all the authority members, and some are different to others. So that was the reason for my proposal for moving this one.
Do we have a seconder for that?
Could I second it, Chair? Indeed, endorse completely Brenda's arguments. At Bristol, for a certain period of time, we've had an approach from full council alternating, subject to the very points Brenda's making. Obviously, during the darker winter months, we tend to avoid evening meetings and put them in the summer and spring, of course. So I wholly endorse her sentiments.
Okay, so we're now debating that amendment. I think Graham is indicating wishes to speak.
It was just in terms of equality, that whilst I respect the right to say women have a weaker need, I don't accept that. I think we all, as members of the committee, deserve to be protected. And I, for one, went out to my car in Filton to find the mirrors smashed off. So, you know, that was distressing. And males and females can face problems of societies.
That's a very fair point to make. Richard, have you spoken?
Just what I mentioned earlier, certainly to get out and about the other fire stations.
Okay, Chris Window.
Thanks, Chair. I totally agree with the proposal that has been followed by my friend Brenda over there. I think that it can be difficult for people around the area, particularly if they're somewhere that they are not familiar with, like Keynsham. I'm a lot more familiar with Keynsham now than I was, having walked a long way round it. So that's an experience, but I do think we've got a police headquarters that we now belong to. That's pretty easy for most people to get to. It's got the advantage of having security there, and we live in an age when security has to be a consideration of all of us. And also, it's a nice facility, especially in the summer. But there are also other areas that we could use. We've got fire stations or we have premises which are large enough to hold the meeting. I would like to see us considering those as well. It also has a good effect as far as staff are concerned, operational staff, that they see us involving ourselves with them. So I think it's a good path to go down. And sat-navs aren't always accurate either. So I'm supporting that fully. I'd like to see us go forward with that.
Robert?
I totally agree with the need to provide safety for all members and all of our staff as well. I don't necessarily agree that Central Bristol is the safest venue of all of our authority area. I also don't necessarily agree that all members will be more familiar with Central than wherever it is that they come from. But I do think we should be looking at trying to make it safe for everybody, and I certainly agree about having daytime meetings in the winter.
So, of course, mentioning parking is very good, but also mentioning access to public transport would be very good. A lovely bus journey from the hill to Cajun there. Is that right? 5 times return. Yes, of course you can.
I totally agree. It isn't just women. It was just a few of us felt particularly vulnerable, and it should be all members should be safe.
Yes.
That's not a problem.
Okay.
The only reason I threw in Central Bristol is I was thinking about the directions from which people are coming, but I fully accept that's not necessarily the best area. It was just an option. It wasn't intended to be anything more than that. But I do think that we do have to look after members, and somewhere that's safe, that's accessible, etc., is something we should be looking at. But I'm also happy to consider having daytime visits for committees to fire stations.
So with the amendment to take into account not being non-gender specific, not making Central Bristol the hub of all activity, and make sure we get there by public transport, are we happy to accept that amendment?
Aye.
Okay. And so the only substantive part of the recommendation left is to approve the proposed schedule of meeting and revised forward plan.
Agreed. Fine.
We're happy with that? Lovely, thank you. We'll go on to item 11. We'll go item 11 and 12 together.
Can do, yeah.
They're both for noting.
Double that here then, Chair. Okay. So item 11, members, there's a paper before you, which is one of our standard papers. It provides you with an update in regards to our service delivery risk reduction activities. It's a report for noting, and I'll just take you through a couple of highlights, if I may. At 3.3, it's worth noting that the service delivery strategy is in being, and good progress is being made in that regard. And as things come forward, obviously we'll take that to the PRSC as we complete the work within that strategy. In terms of children and young people, some really good work going on there. In terms of the CYP advisors working in our unitary authorities in relation to community interventions. Just to name a few, we've assisted with Catch 22 initiative, Royal Marine Reserves Road Safety Education, Bike It Down, Bristol Water Safety Throw Line Initiative, and so on. We've also had staff across the service attending Freshers Week events at the universities and colleges to make sure that our young people are safe in their new residences. Some of them it's the first time they've been away from home, some of them it's the first time that they've ever cooked for themselves, and of course that comes with a certain amount of risk. And also what we do with them is we do evacuation exercises with them and to try and embed good behaviours and good activities in relation to when the fire alarm goes off in their premises. Another initiative which is worthy of note is the hashtag Mates Matter, or the Mates Matter Water Safety Initiative, which actually for the first time both Bristol and Bath rugby clubs have put their differences to one side and come together to do a really, really good social media event or a social media initiative that says that mates matter when you go out, to look after each other, and what's more, water safety is the key behind that, and the RNLI have very much supported us with regards to that. So it's a 3-month initiative that is underway. So I'd like to thank the 2 rugby clubs for their assistance with that. We have, in regards to technical fire safety, members will be aware of the HMI CFRS inspection result, and from a year ago, I just wanted to update members in terms of where we are with our technical fire safety team. The team was originally 12 members, and actually when the inspectors came in, we were down to 7.5 members. We have a 3-stage action plan to improve both the capacity and the capability within our technical fire safety team. The team, pleasingly now, will be, by the end of the year, up to about 23.5, which is great because that gives us capacity. It doesn't necessarily give us a greater capability because it takes a year, 18 months for people to gather the skills, acquire the knowledge and understanding in order to be effective technical fire safety officers. So we are in the process of undertaking that training, but we have got an increased capacity. We do have an increased capability, but not at full capability as of just yet. That is something, obviously, that we're working towards. That's very pleasing, and that's in line with our action plan that we agreed with Majesty's Inspectorate. We've also been reducing our outstanding statutory building regulations consultations, so that pile of work, if you like, is constant, it keeps coming in, but we are absolutely addressing the backlog. And again, PRSC will be reported to with regards to our actions and the things that we tick off on that action plan as we go through them, as we move towards the next inspection, which will be probably in the middle of next year. I just wanted to update members. That is it. The rest of the report, I think, speaks for itself, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. It's about incidents. I was on a steam train special recently that came to Bath and Cardiff Christmas markets, and they had a special deal if it was going to be Cardiff. And we got to Bristol's Junction, and then the train stopped, and we ended up going into Temple Meads and not heading north and west. And the reason given was that a GWR train had broken down in the Severn Tunnel, and we later heard that it had been evacuated. Now, this is a very big deal. I've had some involvement in Severn Tunnel in years past. And I'm just wondering, I'd actually asked Rob about this, but is he well on the way?
Rob is on the way, yeah.
That's what I hear that. But I'm just wondering, this would be a major incident of a train evacuation in the Severn Tunnel. I'm not sure I've never happened. Can you tell me how
No, it may be on the South Wales side, so it could have been evacuation on South Wales, in which case obviously South Wales Fire and Rescue Service will deal with that incident. We only respond for incidents that are Avon outside. So given that we're not fully aware of that, would be a good assessment of the South Wales side of that.
It's not to say that we would naturally get a call just because they've evacuated the train, if the train's broken down.
The train's obviously got, there's always a real worry on the railway about fire breaking out, people jumping out of the train, breaking out of all that.
Yeah, we'd be ready to respond to a fire or an accident, of course, but we wouldn't necessarily get informed of a breakdown or an evacuation as a result of a breakdown. We're not aware of that incident.
Information worth retailing.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. We'll have a look. Perhaps have a chat after. Give us a date and we'll do some digging. Thank you.
Firstly, I apologise, Chairman, because the incident I'm asking about not actually covered in the last quarter, but could I ask Mick or a colleague to comment to summarise the grounds we found for the fire at the Premier Inn's Cripps Causeway?
Yes. The fire investigation was inconclusive, and the reason being is that it was not safe to get in there to do what we would call a detailed fire investigation. So it's inconclusive. So it could be a number of things. It's most likely, I would suggest, to be an accidental fire, and that's the conclusion that we draw at this stage. And I'm saying most likely it's inconclusive.
Thank you, Chair. What's your own instance, actually? There was one in my ward off the Milton Road, a cul-de-sac called Bathurst Road, whereby a corner house and a former dental practice caught fire. And so it was all scaffolding and repair work afterwards, and people in the area remarked about it. So I did try to find out a bit more. So I don't know if that's sort of we're able to report on that briefly now or.
By all means, Councillor, if you want, if we have a chat afterwards, give me the date, and I can get you the incident information.
If councillors, any time that you want some more information with regards to operational incidents or any events that are going on, by all means just email Emma. Emma will select the right officer to get that information, and we'll update you at any time. You don't have to wait for 5 days or anything to do that. And anything that's going on, you'll patch for sure.
So item 11 is for noting. We're all happy to note. Item 12.
Just one incident of note I'd just like to draw members' attention to. Very sadly, on Thursday, the 21st of November, on the morning, an incident in Bleedon, which is south of Western-super-Mare, which unfortunately a 70-year-old woman lost her life at that incident. We had a number of resources that attended that. Obviously, appliances from Western-super-Mare and surrounding stations. But given the severity of the fire, we also asked our urban search and rescue team to attend to provide some shoring up to make the structure safe so that firefighters could continue to operate and resolve that incident. The incident was and is still under investigation in terms of the cause of that incident. But I'd just like to make a point of noting that the attendance for our fire crews, given that it's quite a distance from the fire station, actually attended from alert to being in attendance in 7 minutes, which is an excellent attendance standard and meets our requirements in terms of a critical emergency incident that we're committed to as an authority. But despite their efforts, sadly, unfortunately, a lady lost her life. So I just want to raise that incident as a point of note here.
Comments, questions? The only thing I'd like to say that it's 3.1. Those against the opening day. It was a wonderful event, and I'd like to put on record my thanks to all the staff team that helped to organise that. It was a really good advert for Avon Fire Rescue Service. If that's for noting, we're happy to note. We move on to item 13, which is our esteemed treasurer. Martin, you want to read on this? Esteemed.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Yeah, the Fire Authority is required to agree a budget and set the council tax for next year, 2021, by no later than the 1st of March 2020. This report sets out the latest draft budget for 2021 and the medium-term financial plan for the following 3 years, and together with the key assumptions that have been used to derive that budget. In their technical consultation document issued in October, the government indicated that the referendum limit applicable for next year would be 2% for fire and rescue services. On this basis, 2 options have been proposed or prepared within the report, and that's a 2% increase in the council tax in line with the referendum limit, or a council tax freeze, or a 0% increase in council tax, so leaving it at the same level as it is this year. Due to the general election that members may be aware of recently, the government has not yet issued the provisional local government settlement, which was originally expected to be in early December. And they are also yet to confirm what the referendum limit was going to be. So although they put it out in their consultation document, they are not confirmed that's what it's going to be for next year. It is understood that, along with the Brexit and the National Health Service, that it will be a government priority to set out the government finance settlement fairly soon. The key assumptions within this report are set out, that have been used, are set out in paragraph 3.9 on page 3. In particular, I would like to draw members' attention to the following assumptions. The assumption has been that the former grant or government funding will increase by 1.6% next year. And this was on the basis that the small business rates multiplier was increased by 1.6 by the government in a document that they issued, and the assumption is that a similar increase will be for the grant. Also, the pay award for both uniform and support staff will increase by 2%. I think in previous reports to the Fire Authority, I have indicated that other public sector bodies have had larger increases than the 2% this year, but the assumption is in this document the increase will be 2%. And very importantly, that the pensions grant of £2.4 million that we received the first time in the current year 2019-2020 will continue next year and will increase by 1.6%. With regards to the pension grant, a letter was received from the Home Office dated the 12th of December, which advises that if ministers agree to continue the pension grant in 2021, the intention is that this grant, the distribution formula used as split this grant out between the different foreign rescue services will be updated to reflect the most recent data on employer pension contributions. So clearly, even if the grant continues and it is increased by 1.6%, the amount that we may receive may differ because of the distribution formula has changed. So it may be that we would get less grant or maybe we would get more grant. Obviously, we just don't know at this stage. The letter also reaffirms the intentions that all government grants are going to be considered as part of the spending review that they're going to be carrying out. And at this stage, there's no confirmation that grants will continue after 2021-22. At this stage, it's anticipated that the spending review will encompass the previously announced fair funding review, which is where the government is proposing that the formula grant is reconsidered, and the term is the fair funding review. And that is also to encompass the local authorities retaining 75% of the business rates, as they only have 10% retained, 90% goes back to the government. The draft budget has assumed that general inflation will be around 2%. Obviously, following the outcome of the general election, it's likely that progress will be made towards leaving the European Union. It is not possible to determine with any certainty what the likely impacts of this will be on the economy or inflation going forward. Just to remind members that we have previously set up an investor safe financial pressures reserve to allow for any adverse impact of Brexit in the short term. The analysis of the savings out on page 8 of the report identifies a one-off saving of £0.5 million in respect of capital financing costs. This saving is a one-off and is a result of the cumulative effect of reducing the debt following the disposal of the former HQ site, so using £4 million to repay debt. The additional repayment of debt was made last financial year, and the fact that the capital programme has been delayed, so we haven't progressed with the capital programme as we were expecting. The proposed capital programme is set out in page 10 of the report, and it does identify a number of spending pressures, particularly in relation to the reinvestment in the future project and the fleet replacement programme. Work on the fleet replacement strategy is currently underway, and a paper will be brought forward to members to agree at a future date. Obviously, the capital programme will be reviewed once that fleet replacement programme strategy has been approved. I think it's important to mention at this time that the capital programme, as it currently stands, will need additional revenue savings to be made to finance it moving forward. So I think there are additional savings that the Fire Authority are going to have to make going forward if it is to agree that level of capital programme. And those savings are not included within the figures before you. The financial impacts of the two options are set out on pages 12 to 14 of the report. In summary, under option 1, a 2% increase in council tax. Over the medium term, additional savings of around £1 million will have to be found, and under option 2, those savings will be £1.6 million. For from members' information set out on page 14 is a comparison of the average Bounty council tax levels for fire and rescue services in the current year 2019-2020. Members may wish to note that the Bounty council tax for Avon was £73.48 compared to an average of £77.62. For the first time, this table does include Metropolitan Fire and Rescue Services, which have slightly wider area responsibility, so we don't normally include them in the comparison, but they have been included in this table for completeness. It does exclude Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Services because they're part of a different arrangement, and of course London a different arrangement. The Fire Authority is required to maintain a general reserve, or working balance as we term it, to allow for unseen or unexpected events that may occur during the year. Obviously, if it is necessary to use that working balance, then it does need to be replaced the following year. At the moment, it is proposed that this working balance should be maintained at £1.5 million, which is the level that the Fire Authority has previously agreed, which is around about 3% of the net budget. Detailed in the estimated reserves that are expected to be in place at the end of this current financial year are shown in Appendix 2 on page 19. Other than that, I don't think there's much more I want to really bring members' attention to. The recommendations are set out in paragraph 2 on pages 1 and 2, and I'm happy to try and answer any questions that members may have. Obviously, the budget this year is based on, we haven't had any figures from government, so it's a lot of estimating that's been included.
Richard?
Chairman, my comments will be mercifully brief. Martin set out various baseline assumptions. I don't have any significant concerns about those. I would just actually, my personal comment perhaps relates to the inflation that we've already saw a bounce in the value of the pound, which many people are speculating could go on and return to the pre-referendum levels. And my understanding is that could have a negative impact on inflation. So people will have their own personal views, but overall I think we need to be cautious. We need to be conservative with a small c. Obviously there could be significant demands on our services. As people will know, I've always, in my political career, argued for a value for money and a small increase in the council tax. But as we know from our home councils, public safety and the safeguarding of the vulnerable in society needs to come first with us. So bearing in mind the imponderables on the increased demand on our services, personally, I wouldn't have a hesitation in going for the 2% increase in preset.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move the recommendations because I honestly believe that they're showing sense in an unsensible world, if you get what I mean. We had the Avon Pension Fund meeting yesterday, and that we couldn't make decisions because we didn't know what decisions were going to be made in Westminster. And I think at the moment what's proposed is sensible. So hopefully in a couple of months down the line we'll be able to see a pattern of where we're going to. So I'd like to move the recommendation.
Neil?
I just wondered, looking at the charts on page 14, I know you do comparatively really well, but how is it that West Midlands seems to management such a...
I think West Midlands are one of the metropolitan foreign rescue services that we would have normally included in the comparison that we presented to members in the past, but we have included all foreign rescue services for the purposes of this comparison this time around.
So there's some different bases on which
they've got, I mean, I think
We've got a lot more people for
yeah,
starters.
I think Metropolitan District, Metropolitan Fire Rescue Service has got a slightly wider remit. Is that correct? I don't know if you know the area. I think they cover certain areas, so you don't
Sorry,
turn to
yeah, the lungs outside for a minute. The way that their budgets and everything else will be set up will be completely different to the local authorities, where it's a combined authority for sure. I don't know the detail of that, but they have different responsibilities.
I mean, interestingly, interestingly, there's 5 Metropolitan Fire and Rescue Services that have been included in this table. West Midlands is one, West Yorkshire is one of the other lower ones, and South Yorkshire, obviously, are the 3 that are below Avon's average, and the one slightly above are Merseyside and Tyne and Wear. As I said, Greater Manchester and London are included in that because they're part of a mayoral arrangement for Greater Manchester, and then they're part of the arrangements for London. So those are included, but we tend to exclude it. But I don't know how West Midlands are set.
They don't do as much as us, that's one of the reasons. We do more than they do, don't we? They falls behind doors, do they?
Sorry.
If I may, for Metropolitan Service for West Midlands Fire Service, 2/3 of their total budget comes from local council tax, and only 1/3 of their revenue budget comes from central government, whereas our percentages are slightly different.
That's just changed from recent years from 60%, 40% to 40%, 60%.
So we've got a proposal and a second. If there's no more comments, I'll ask for a vote to support the 5 recommendations en bloc, if you're happy to do that. Okay, all in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? No, thank you very much. Martin, again.
Thank you, Chair. Not Steve this time.
No, it won't.
Okay. I will push it.
No, you can if you want to.
This report provides members with the second assessment of the forecast outcome position on the revenue and capital budgets and potential indicators for the current year 2019-2020 and provides financial issues. The report shows that the latest forecast in the revenue account will underspend by £106,000 at the year end, which is slightly down from the previous forecast of 181,000. Details of the underspends, etc., are shown in Appendix 1 on page 10. Unfortunately, since this report was written, a number of additional spending pressures have been identified, particularly in relation to IT, and there are implementation costs and replacing toilet servers that we have to do. And also, there are a number of potential firefighter ill health cases that are in the pipeline, and if they are approved, then it's likely that the cost of ill health retirements for the year are likely to exceed budget, and this may mean that in effect we won't have an underspend. We may have to use some reserves to fund those. We do have a reserve for ill health retirements because they do fluctuate from one year to the next, so I don't see that as a problem. There have been a number of revenue budget adjustments since the first assessment report to members in September, and these are set out in Appendix 2. The main budget adjustments are that there have been a number of corporate staff vacancies, and these are higher than anticipated earlier. The budget has therefore been reduced by £300,000 to reflect these vacancies. 36,000 of that has been utilised to fund additional training costs, staff training costs, and the balance of £264,000 has been transferred back to reserves, so we won't transfer so much from reserves as we originally anticipated. 126,000 of the premises and health and safety critical works reserve has been utilised to fund works for removal of asbestos at a number of our sites. So we've identified the need to remove asbestos from a number of our sites, so we've used that reserve to do that. Similarly, the PPE, personal protective equipment reserve, 140,000 has been utilised to replace some of the PPE which is coming to the end of its useful economic life, and some of the suits have been sent through repair or just beyond economic repair, so we've had to replace them. Also worth noting that the arrangements for maintenance of our national resilience fleet has changed. Previously, we paid for the repairs and then claimed back that money from Merseyside Fire Rescue Service. It was deemed much more efficient and effective than Merseyside simply just, as lead authority, paid for the repairs up front, so they charged the Merseyside direct rather than we paid for them and then claimed the grant back. And also, as members may have noted from previous reports, the ESMCP project is currently on hold. The replacement radio scheme is currently on hold. We had government grant in past years to pay for that. That has just been transferred back to the reserve and will be used this year. Will be used when the project goes forward. The grant can only be used for the actual ESMCP. I always get these initials the wrong way around for some reason, but yeah, it can only be used for that purpose. And if it's not used, it has to be paid back to the government. The camera programme has been reflected or updated to reflect the revised expenditure profile for the Avon project. As members may remember from the last meeting, a report was presented where the expenditure on the Avon project was agreed, but there were delays in that project proceeding, which is now proceeding, but won't be spent this year. So we reduced the programme down, and it will be brought in next year. So simply we bring the money in next year. There's also likely to be slippage in the capital programme at the year end, primarily in respect to fleet, £1.8 million. Members agreed £2.5 million for the replacement of 7 appliances. The order has gone in for those appliances. It's unlikely that those appliances, we will have received the chassis, but the build of those appliances won't be completed by the end of the financial year. Obviously, we'll keep members updated on the progress being made towards them. And also, digitisation of the service and the sum of 900,000 was put aside to fund that. Oh, sorry, 800,000 I think it was put aside to fund that programme. The transformation team is not in place yet, so work has not started on that project. So that money will sit forward to next year when the transformation team is in place and we identify our IT needs going forward. Further details of the capital programme are on page 67. The recommendations are on in paragraph 2, which are basically to approve the variations in the programme and the adjustments that have been made. If there are any questions about finance for those, certainly. Richard?
Martin, I appreciate all aspects of revenue capital need to be carefully covered to ensure we actually hold the budget to account.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the revenue budget on Appendix 1,
yeah.
and I'm particularly looking at big percentage decreases. The largest one I can see is travel allowances, 12.7% reduction. So how is this achieved?
The honest truth is probably the budget was overestimated in the first place, because obviously we have to estimate what travelling staff will do during the year. So obviously some of that will depend on the number of incidences and the number of journeys that are made. It is only an estimate, Councillor, and obviously it's more a reflection of that estimate. It's probably slightly under what we anticipated the current travel is, slightly under where we originally estimated it to be.
Any further questions or comments?
Could I move the proposal?
Okay, so Bruce, to be second. Appreciate the second. Are we happy to take this on block? Okay, all in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? No, thank you very much. We go on to item 15, closing back to the air zones. I think Simon and Annabelle are going to do that one. Yep. Is that a shot you, Annabelle?
Members, the recommendations on page 1 of the report, members are asked to note and confirm their outline support for the service's approach to implement and meet the requirements of the clean air zones both in Bath and also in the centre, the proposals for the centre of Bristol. On page 2, members can see from the table there in page 2 the differences between the two schemes, and certainly at the bottom of that table the emergency service exemptions is a slight difference once again within the two schemes themselves. What that does mean for us, for Avon Fire and Rescue Service, well, there's a number of considerations that we need to have a thought about and also to implement. One, of course, is a review of our fleet. The Energy Saving Trust in 2008 reviewed our fleet, and about 58% of our fleet, both on our frontline appliances, our auxiliary vehicles and also our essential users, within the vehicles for business purposes, were assessed, and as I said there, about 59% of the fleet were deemed to be compliant. What that means that we now need to do is obviously take a look at the requirements under each of the schemes. With the Baines Clean Air Zone, the service has been given a memorandum of understanding until January 2025, where our forward plan for our fleet replacement programme is hope that we'll be able to meet the conditions of the Clean Air Zone, but also it enables us to look at our overall fleet management across the service and how we manage that and maybe distribute some of our vehicles to meet the needs of the Clean Air Zones. As you can see for the Bristol one, there is a permanent exemption for all charges for emergency vehicles from there. At that point, I will pause because there are a number of other things on the bottom of page 3 and page 4 in terms of the actions and considerations that we're currently going through. And I'll just ask Annabelle to highlight any key aspects there to members that are maybe of relevance.
I just think that the few things that I would add are, one, that we are involved with a number of other fire and rescue services and vehicle manufacturers, fire appliance manufacturers in the UK, to look at developing a fully electric fire appliance. So that's sort of best guess estimates is sort of 5 to 10 years off, but so that's quite an exciting bit of work, which would obviously be low emissions appliances across the fleet. And then I guess the other thing to add is, whilst the main clean air zone the clean air zone in Bath and the main part of the clean air zone in Bristol are basically the same scheme. It's a Class C clean air zone, which means private vehicles are exempt from any charges, and it's non-compliant HGVs, taxis, buses, etc., which is applied to. However, also in Bristol, in a small central area of Bristol, there will be a complete diesel car ban from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. every day. So obviously there are a number of considerations we need to make in terms of ensuring that any of our staff who require their vehicle for work and currently have a diesel vehicle, that we put in place to either support them to change their vehicles, or we review our policies and practices around movements of staff which would require them going into that area. But obviously I guess it goes without saying that first and foremost, as a frontline public sector organisation, so we do want to take our responsibilities very seriously, and clearly the safety of our communities, the safety and health of our communities is paramount, and that obviously includes the air that they're breathing.
Any questions or comments? Richard?
Unusually, Bristol seems to be more lenient than Bath with regard to our vehicles. As you may know, the Avon business case presently with the government as a part of this. Do they come back to us, or do they make a decision just themselves?
Well, so Baines has already submitted its outline business case to government, which has been approved, and they're in the process of putting together their detailed business case. So they certainly consulted widely before each stage.
I
And Bristol,
fine, sorry.
so,
Yeah.
so Bristol, my understanding is they will do the same in that they've
Fine.
consulted widely, and then before the detailed business case goes in, they will consult again.
Okay.
And there was the mayor held a clean air summit recently in County Hall, to which a wide number of representative bodies and organisations, including ourselves, were invited to. So they are sort of consulting.
I would have to say that I don't recall your Somerset Council being consulted in the slightest about the Bristol Clean Air Plan. The Evening Post was our biggest source of information.
Could I say, Chair, I bumped into Jacob Rees-Mogg on my travels on last Thursday.
You can get cancelled.
You can, yes. So I've known for a long time anyhow, sort of thing. But I did make he started talking about clean air zones, and I said, well, hang on a minute, you've got ambulances, fire brigade, all this is all capital project. And he did say to me that part of the Conservative government was to actually help the services actually overcome that by putting more into the capital. So what's his space? Because in February sort of thing, I should be down to his surgery saying, hang on a minute.
We should wash with cash, Bruce.
I don't think we've ever been washed with cash.
Are we happy to note and confirm the outline support for the approach that the fire rescue services are applying? Do you have a proposal?
Chair.
Bruce, a seconder. Richard, you all in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. On to item 16. Is the chief going to be well enough for this?
Forgive me.
But you have to send you home soon, you realise that, don't you?
Members will be aware that obviously the phase 1 report for the Grenville Tower fire has been published now, and it's right and proper that we consider that in fullness, and it's right and proper that we respond to it in the right way as a service and as an authority. Some members will be aware about the incident that happened 2.5 years ago. Tragically, 71 people were affected and lost their lives, and obviously it affected several hundred people, including obviously the residents, the locality, the community, and of course the responders that responded on the night, and from a multiple range of agencies. Of course, quite rightly, public inquiry, of course, quite rightly, a report being published. If I could just take members through the paper in terms of the structure. As a background, then there is our initial response. So just immediately after the incident, of course, we put certain things in place. We did a large number of reassurance visits to all of our local authority high-rise buildings, as well as other non-local authority buildings, those that are residential high-rise premises. We did over 100 visits, in actual fact, in a few weeks immediately after the incident, and that was to do public reassurance, to do community safety work, to do home safety visits, and to do inspections of those buildings. So there's over 100 visits done during that time, and we did obviously a high number of fire safety audits as well. We also, where we felt was necessary, increased the number of visits by local crews, what we would call 7-2D visits, which is where crews familiarise themselves with the premises so that they are au fait with the design and layout and the firefighting fixed installations within the premises. And also we increased the predetermined attendance to high-rise incidents at that time as well, so we'd have more resources on the ground in the early stages of an incident. You'll recall that Dame Judith Hackett did a review of the building regulations, and that reported in December when Dame Judith published her interim report. That had found some significant failings, if you like, in the system, and the fact that the system was broken and the system needs sorting. So that there will be a review of building regulations, and there will also be considerations from the recommendations in that report about the lifespan and the life cycle of a building and who owns the risk for that building during that period, so that the building stays fit for purpose for its whole life cycle. And of course, we will wait to see the outcomes from that in the fullness of time. In some of the premises within our area, of course, we did put in place a waking watch where necessary, where the owner of the premises, if they've got any concerns, have got a waking watch in place. So they have 24-hour security, essentially. And they've also put external CCTV in certain places as well. So they've increased, if you like, the awareness of the buildings on a patch. In terms of the Grenville Tower Inquiry, Phase 1 report, the Right Honourable Sir Martin Morbick, Phase 1 went on for a period of time, a long period of time, and the Phase 1 inquiry was concerned with investigating the cause of the fire, its subsequent development and the steps taken by London Fire Brigade and other emergency services in their response to it. And members will be aware that there was a lot of publicity with regards to this. And the report makes a number of recommendations, and it makes certain recommendations directly to London Fire Brigade, but of course it doesn't just relate to London Fire. You could say that actually those recommendations are applicable to every fire rescue service in the UK. So we certainly will take that on board in that regard. So the report has been published now. Of course, we've done some stuff upstream. As soon as the incident happened, we've done a fair bit of things that we just said just a minute ago. But it's now important that we take these recommendations on board, that we do a proper gap analysis between where we are as an organisation and what these recommendations are saying. It's also important that we don't do that in isolation. It's important that we take on board the National Fire Chiefs Council developments in this area as well. And what we will do is, once we've finished that work, is that we'll come back to members, probably through performance review and scrutiny committee, to say, right, this is what we found out of this is our gap analysis, and this is what we're going to do about it, to make sure that the public are as safe as they can possibly be, and obviously we are the best that we can be in our response to any high-rise incidents in the future.
Bruce, sorry about taking over, but it's something close to me, and I'd like to thank the fire authority for their work on walnut buildings down in Radstock, which basically had the same cladding as Grenville Tower. And at the moment, we had spent many years trying to get Curo, the Housing Association, to do something about it. And with the fire authorities' help, with local fire station and everything else, we've actually got the CEO of Curo actually knocking on my door saying, how can we help? And we're clearing out walnut buildings now. It's all going to be cleared out. By the end of January, 32 families are being moved into good accommodation in the local area, and hopefully by February, March we'll be knocking the whole thing down and starting again, because it's needed that for years. And not only myself but other councillors have complained about this, and sadly it takes Grenville Tower to actually get people to do something about it, which is a very sad thing to say, but at the end of the day I feel a lot better because the people moving out of walnut buildings are actually going to move into safer and healthier buildings. So once again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. And it's worth noting that we do have a handful of buildings which we are obviously working with very closely and monitoring very closely. And these are the buildings that will have the waking watch and security, and we would have enhanced our operational response to those buildings should there be a call for the service. And we are obviously working very hard to try and remove any cladding that we have on the buildings and on our patch, but it's only a small percentage, and it's only half at this stage.
This paper is for noting. Are we happy to note it, colleagues?
Aye.
Thank you. Question 17 on recruitment update, statutory officer, I think you're going to be another Shazzy.
Yes, Chair. So People and Culture Committee shortlisted this morning for the treasurer role. The monitoring officer role is out to advert until the end of
Martin.
You declared really so you're not taking part in the actual discussion. So he was at the meeting. So yes, that's fine. So treasurer, we've shortlisted this morning. Monitoring officer is out to advert until the end of this month. We're hoping to set the interviews up for early in the new year. So the request before you today is that we extend the interim arrangements for the interim treasurer and interim monitoring officer until we're able to permanently recruit, which I think will be able, given people's notice periods and the interview time that we take.
Okay, any proposer for that?
Right, Chairman.
Richard Eddy, seconder, Chris Windows. All in favour? Any against? Any abstention? Thank you. Thank you. Now, I have to resolve to exclude the press and the public under section 12, schedule 12A, part 1, paragraph 2 of the Local Government Act. Are we all happy to do that? We are. In favour? Form I, seconder, Ms. Windows, you all in favour? Okay. The lucky ones are to leave. The rest will hopefully be not long after you. Happy Christmas all.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Thank you.
FDU gas